Joseph interprets more dreams, and his brothers appear in Egypt but do not recognize him. I am Ronald, and welcome to Bible Talk, where I explore sections of the Bible. I'm continuing in the book of Genesis, chapter 41. Previously, we saw Joseph in prison in Egypt, and pretty much everyone had forgotten him except God. Today we begin with Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, having a pair of dreams. Now, in ancient Near Eastern cultures, they believed that dreams were messages from God, so Pharaoh called for his magicians to interpret these dreams. Now, the magicians that Pharaoh sent for were more in line with mediums, interpreting dreams and such, not performing magic tricks. So verse 1 begins with, "Then it came to pass at the end of 2 full years that Pharaoh had a dream, and behold, he stood by the river." So for 2 years, Joseph was in prison, forgotten by the butler, yet many lessons resulted from this. Sometimes the good we do seems to go unrewarded. And waiting is a common theme in the Christian life. God often appoints us to wait much longer than we would like. But God's hand was in this. The butler knew exactly where to find Joseph when the time was right. If he had been released earlier, who knows? Although Pharaoh's magicians or mediums couldn't help in this situation, this was all part of God's excellent plan. It paved the way for the butler to remember that Joseph is still around and he has a special gift for interpreting dreams. So the butler finally remembered Joseph and confessed the wrong that he did against him, and he recommended Joseph to Pharaoh as a man who interprets dreams. So when God's timing was right to get Joseph out of prison, it all happened very quickly. Often we feel that there's a long period when God doesn't do anything, but when his timing is right, everything can come together in an instant. When we think God isn't doing anything, he's doing the work most important to him. It's developing our character and transforming us into the image of Jesus Christ. Now, we love the words of Romans 8:28, and we know that all things work together for the good to those who love God, to those who are the called according to his purpose. But don't forget the next verse, Romans 8:29. For it says, "For whom he foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son, that he might be the firstborn among many brethren." God's work in our lives is to conform us into Jesus Christ's image, which takes time. Now, Pharaoh's dreams was a revelation from God. He received it, but could not understand it. It was like someone reading the Bible, but really needing help from a man or woman of God to understand. Verse 41:16, "It is not in me." Pharaoh gave Joseph a golden opportunity to glorify himself, but Joseph refused. He did not use this opportunity to glorify himself before Pharaoh, but only to glorify God. Pharaoh explained the dream to Joseph, much like we read in Genesis 41, 2-7. Now, because a famine is coming, part of the interpretation is to prepare during the first 7 years while there is an agricultural abundance. When the 7 years of famine came, they would be prepared. And not only that, but the famine would extend throughout the entire world. So the Egyptians could then sell the grain to the world. To this point, Joseph gave Pharaoh knowledge, telling him what would happen as revealed in the dreams that were a message from God, but now Joseph began to apply wisdom to the knowledge. It's good to remember the difference between knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge tells you what's going on. Wisdom tells you what to do about it. Knowledge is the diagnosis. Wisdom is directed to the cure. Knowledge is good and necessary. It just isn't the entire picture. It's not enough information. Our world has much more knowledge than wisdom. Scientists, poets, politicians, and others can often see the problems, but true wisdom sees Jesus as the answer. Beginning at verse 33, "Let him appoint officers over the land to collect 1/5 of the produce to the land of Egypt in the 7 plentiful years." In his God-given wisdom, Joseph saw that this great coming crisis needed proper administration. The problem had to be understood, the goal and the vision to meet the goal had to be formulated, the right people had to be put in place, officers over the land, and they had to understand the big vision and their role in it. Now, someone had to make sure that it all operated according to the plan. The work had to be measured, God would use a man to put all this into place. It wouldn't happen by what we usually think of as a miracle. Pharaoh also understood that Joseph had the right interpretation of the dream and the right advice to respond to the message from heaven. A man who was in the Spirit of God. Pharaoh had plenty of priests, magicians, holy men. What he didn't have was Joseph, was a man with the Spirit of God. So this made Joseph stand out among the others. Verse 39 to 41, then Pharaoh said to Joseph, inasmuch as God has shown you all this, there is no one as discerning and wise as you. You shall be over my house, and all my people shall be ruled according to your word. Only in regard to the throne will I be greater than you. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, see, I have set you over all the land of Egypt. This was the first firm indication that Pharaoh wanted Joseph to be the one to save Egypt through wise planning and preparation. Now Joseph had the knowledge and wisdom, but Pharaoh had a choice. He chose to give Joseph authority over all. He didn't say, thanks for the advice, I'll handle it myself. No, Pharaoh wisely surrendered to Joseph's knowledge, wisdom, and authority. Joseph would be over Pharaoh's house, his personal business. Joseph would rule all the people of Egypt according to his word. And Joseph would be the second in the kingdom, just behind Pharaoh. Joseph would have authority over all the land of Egypt, and Pharaoh also arranged at this time a marriage between Joseph and a woman from a prominent local family. And during the 7 years of abundance, Joseph was busy storing up food, but he had time to father 2 children, Manasseh and Ephraim, names that we'll be seeing a lot in the future. Now I'm going to leave it here for today. Thank you so much for watching. God bless you, and I'll see you next time.